I wanted to do something a little bit sexier than what I usually do. No, not like that. Like this. But don't. That's for the end of the video. Keep watching and you'll see how I made it. You're aging the right way if, as you get older, you just regress into doing the things that your childhood self loved to do, except this time, 1, you can drink, and 2, you have money to make it as awesome as you like. For me, that means dressing up as fantasy characters and partying all night with a bunch of like-minded nerds in a beautiful hotel in downtown LA. But that's getting way ahead of myself. Let's take it back to a few months ago when my boyfriend and I were down at the fashion district, and the fashion district gets a lot of scrap from the garment district and the upholstery industry around there, and there happened to be a bin full of half hides and scraps of fabric, and I love going through that and finding just beautiful pieces. There wasn't much that day, but there was this piece, a dark, dark teal, like depths of the ocean dark. And my boyfriend very sweetly offered to buy it for me because it was only $25. You can't get deals like that anywhere else. And it was in practically pristine condition. So I was mulling it over and I was like, I have so many crafting supplies as is, I really need to go through them. And he insisted to get it, and so I said, fine, but I have to think of a reason to use it, and it has to get used this year. That way it is not just collecting dust in my closet. And then I remembered there was the Labyrinth of Jareth Masquerade, which was coming up in a couple months. And this is a beautiful event. It is held in the Millennium Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, which is just a stunning hotel. I got to go the first time a couple years back, and I absolutely loved it. So I thought, all right, I will use this piece of leather to build us some costumes to go to this event. This event is based off of the Labyrinth movie, the masquerade scene specifically, and everyone dresses up in these beautiful, fantastic costumes, and we dance, and I have a friend who made the dragon puppet named Sparkles, and there's goblin shows, and there's drinking, and there's group dancing, and then there's regular dancing, and there's fairies and mermaids, and just so much wonderful fun things to see and do. So I said, okay, I will make us some costumes for that, and we will go. But then my boss kind of threw a wrench into the plan because he said that my boyfriend's outfit looked like the Deep from The Boys. So I decided to pare it back a bit, especially considering this was his first time dressing up with me. But I really wanted to do a mold making and casting project, which I have not shown any of this on the channel despite it being my job for the past 3 years. So I was going to make him the shoulder piece. As for my outfit, I knew I wanted to make something a little bit sexier. I've seen these plunge corsets around the internet, around some of my favorite makers, and I wanted to challenge myself to do it. I've made a leather corset before, but this was lamb's leather, which is much, much softer than this patent leather, which is very stiff and very heavy. So I knew I was gonna be challenged, but I did not know I was going to be this challenged. And I did not make it any easier on myself because by the time I thought to start this project, I only had 3 weeks to get it done. And I ended up working 12-hour days the whole time. So without further ado, let us jump into the chaos. All right, let me catch you up on what I have done. I made a skirt block using the hips of my corset pattern. I did a muslin fitting to make it perfect and transferred all those alterations to my paper pattern. So now I have a skirt block that I can make many skirts from later. Then I took the skirt block, I extended the length, and I folded out the darts because we don't need this since this is a stretch fabric. And then I did the slash and spread method to create this ruching that I realize you can't actually see because the fabric is just so busy in its own right, but I know it's there. Then I cut out the fabric, I gathered the ruching by hand. I did not have enough fabric for the back, or so I thought. When I cut out the front, I just assumed I would have to go get more fabric, but when I put the two selvages together, it actually made like the perfect back piece, so I only needed a single yard of this fabric, which is great. So I just pinned it to my bodice with the selvage as the center seam at the back, and cut a little back panel, and it created a perfect little point in the back as well. So yay, we love when things serendipitously work out. Next, I need to cut out some circle skirts to attach as fins, and I want to figure out some sort of fin thing that will come out of the back here. I bought a bunch of fabrics from Remainders up in Pasadena, which is a craft thrift store, and I bought them in a bunch of teal colors. I didn't really know what fabric I wanted. I'm gonna play around with some draping of the different fabrics and see what I want. I do for sure have a lycra, a very light one, that I want for the base of the fins, but for all the pretty shinies on top of the fins, I don't know yet. So let's get to playing. Oh boy! It's been a couple days and I have a Disney hangover. So I really don't feel like doing anything, but I have 2 weeks to get this costume done. So I cut out some circle patterns to use for the bottom hem of the mermaid skirt, but it's not enough, so I have to pattern out another piece. So let's go do that. I kind of messed around with the layers. I had some of this iridescent, and it's too light to be on its own, but I did pick up this teal organza from Remainders, and I think layered over it allows the bottom layer of organza to just kind of peek through that sheen. I can't decide if I want to layer more fabric and put more volume in these layers, or if I want to just do the same cuts. I'm leaning towards just doing the same cuts, that way I can just get the whole skirt done today. I also have very limited fabric, so I need to consider that as well. I don't know, I'm gonna think about it, and you'll see what I do in a minute. I love it, I love it. I love how poofy it is. I love the colors. I think the fabrics just worked out so perfectly. I know I said I wasn't going to do any gathered or plaited fabric, but the volume looks so good. I think I'll have enough to put a fin up the back. I am going to prioritize the kind of waist fin, kind of like how Ariel has it, but I'm super stoked. So I'm gonna show you how I threw it together. And I think once I get this part on the other side all put together, then I can sew everything up. I'm so excited. So let's get to work. Let's rest here for a moment. Okay, let's get started. So yesterday I went snorkeling for the first time, and it was amazing, but I also unlocked a new fear, which is the ocean and drowning a little bit. But you know, you don't grow in comfort, you grow in discomfort. So with the help of my boyfriend, I pushed through and went out twice and was really inspired by what I saw down there. We were down in Laguna Beach, and the ocean was just so beautifully teal, and the grasses were so green, and then we had these bright Garibaldi fish that were just this amazing orange that contrasted so beautifully against all the teals. And so I realized I needed to put some pops of orange in to represent the Garibaldi fish that I saw and give that really beautiful contrast. So today my partner and I went down to the fabric district, and while we were down there we stopped into the trim store, and originally I was thinking some large sequins or some rhinestones, but I didn't really want to glue anything onto the leather. I only wanted to stitch it. And then the lady showed me this trim that almost looked like little fish's heads. So I got about a half yard of that, and I'm gonna sew those onto the dress. Last night I got the mock-up done and tried it on. I'll just show you. Okay, so here's the mock-up. The back is closed, so I need to take like a 1/2 inch off of each side, and then I think it'll fit perfectly. I guess I forgot to do that. And then the boobage area is doing exactly what I thought it was gonna do. Because I have this deep cut here, it is wanting to pull away. So I need to put a bit of corsetry mesh in to pull it together, and then I think it'll do what I'm hoping. Let me stick this in real quick and kind of show you what I mean. Okay, so there you can see now it's holding everything perfectly. I no longer have those tension lines that were appearing across the bust. It's not giving the boobage that I wanted it to boobage. So I think I might have to go in and put in some pads, as well as make sure that I have this part really flat and straight. I also want it to do this very high hip to a low front point. So all I need to do is cut off this area that I have marked with the pink pen and extend the front panel down, and then transfer these cuts to my pattern. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. I'm very excited. Now the problem is that my leather is pretty thick, and though I can sew it, the seams are going to be really bulky, and I don't want that, which means I have to shave the seams, which means I need a special tool called a skeever. So I ordered one from Tandy because they're not far from me in North Hollywood, and yet they decided to ship from Texas. So hopefully it'll be here in 2 days and I can whip out the leather part of the corset really quick, at which point this will come together very fast. But I'm kind of at a standstill aside from altering the base a little bit. So yeah, let's get to it. Battery's gonna die, so I'll check in with you again shortly. Let's roll the sculpting montage. Good morning, friends. It is now 1 week to Labyrinth. I meant to get Saturday tickets so that I could hopefully have Friday night to finish things up, but I waited too long, which means I have only today, tomorrow, and Monday to finish the costume. So today I have to make a lot of headway. On the to-do list is I need to cut out all the leather, shear the sides to mold the shoulder piece, make a jacket for the shoulder piece, cast the shoulder piece, cast a couple extra spikes to turn into a crown for me, some leather collar and cuffs for my boyfriend's outfit, hem the skirt still, build the corset basically, as well as add all the pearls and the little rhinestone fishies. That's a lot, but once I get the leather cut out and I start molding the piece, it should go pretty fast. I need to do the leather parts first because that's going to be very messy. Once I get the leather cut out, sewing it up will be really fast and the mold making will not get contaminated by all the leather shards. So today I'm mostly going to be jumping between the mold and the corset. I'm doing a brush on mold, so those layers will need some time to tack up. So in between each layer of silicone, I will sew a bit more of the corset, and then I can do the jacket tomorrow and then hopefully cast on Monday. So with that, let's jump into it. so I think I have enough silicone here, but I don't know, I might be cutting it tight. So as you saw, I finished sculpting this. I put it on a base so that I could get that nice lip going, and she is basically ready to mold. So let's get going with that. We're gonna need some Easy Release 200, and I need some gloves. Also gonna need a little baking spatula. This one's nice because it has the semi-flat tip, so you can really get in your cup and scrape it and make sure everything is well. I have almost everything I need. I'm just missing some gloves, some cups to mix everything in, and some cheap paintbrushes to brush on my first layer. So I'm gonna pop into the store real quick and I'll be right back with those. Picked up some of these cups. They had purple, so of course I had to get it. These are 30% stronger, which will be good because that means I can reuse them and reuse them. The silicone will just cure inside the cup and I can rip it out and reuse it, so this will be good to have. Then they had some mini cups here, which will be good for when I go to do the resin part of it, but that's for later. Now they had two kinds of gloves. They had latex and these little dinky plastic ones. Now Rebound 25 here is a platinum silicone, meaning it is cure inhibited by latex. So if I were to use latex gloves with this and touch it at all, it will not cure. So even though these little guys suck, they're better than ruining all of our silicone. So they didn't really have just chip brushes, but I found this pack that has 2 chip brushes right here, which is perfect. That'll be enough for the first 2 layers, and then the next 2 layers I can spatula the thicker silicone on. So yeah, with that, we've got everything. So let's get started. Okay, now this has been released. It needs a moment to dry, let the propellants kind of bake off, which means I'm going to dump out some silicone and get that ready for mixing. Now, I am a pretty messy person, if I'm being honest. And we use this gram scale for other things, technically food. Now, you don't want to use the same gram scale for food and for mold making and casting, but I don't really have an option right now. So I'm going to cover this in tape so that if I do spill something on it, I can remove it. Okay, it is all covered now, and I need another cup. Now, the thing about mold making and casting is you want to make sure that you have everything out and ready before you actually need it, unlike sewing, unlike how I operate 90% of my life. But I have my paintbrush, I have my mixing cup, I have my gram scale, and I have my silicone all poured out and ready, as well as my piece has been released, so I'm good to start. You can see it reads 6 grams, that's how much the cup weighs, which means we need to tare it so it reads 0. That way we're only accounting for the weight of our silicone, which I already poured out my A, and there we go. Now it's reading at 52, which means I need 52 grams of B. 104. I need to very thoroughly mix up my cup. Make sure to really get in those corners. Good. So now I get to take my really soft chip brush and just go in and start painting. I don't want to push too hard on this because I don't want to disturb my detail lines. I don't want to push any of my sculpting down. Now normally you want to use a stippling motion, but I don't want to disturb my sculpt, so I'm just going to do a gentle brushing with a little flick to pop any bubbles that may occur. Okay, first layer is on, and it is already starting to thicken because it's pretty warm in here. So I'm going to let this sit for a couple minutes while it tacks up. You also want to make sure that you have a flange here because we need a way for the hard jacket to hold on to the piece. I also made sure to get underneath the lip really well. It's very easy to miss that spot and end up with no silicone there, and then that's going to cause you to have a big bubble on your casting because the resin's going to fill that cavity where you didn't get the silicone. So the first layer is so important to be very thorough and make sure you get every little nook and cranny in detail. But okay, so the piece is sticky, but it's not coming off on my finger anymore, which means we are ready for the next layer. So I'm just gonna repeat the same process again, mixing up about 100 grams total of the silicone and brushing it on. So let's hop to it. The thing about mold making and casting is you want to make sure that you have everything out and ready before you actually need it. I did not do that. So we're on our way to my friend Ricky's place to pick up some Thyvex to thicken the silicone. Luckily, she works for the place that sells all the materials I use. She's an old coworker of mine and happened to have some because now they're closed till Monday. So hopefully this isn't expired. Hopefully it will work. I'm pretty sure it will. And we are good to keep chugging along on the project. So thank you to Ricky for saving the day. Ricky saving my butt.
There you go.
Thank you. So Ricky came in clutch. It is the next day. Ricky has come in clutch with some Thyvex to thicken the silicone so that I can get the final couple layers on, build up the silicone so that the thin areas don't rip. And then I'll get to put the jacket on. So let's get the final thickened layers on and then get the jacket on and get to work. Now we're going to add a few drops of the Thyvex to thicken up our base silicone so that we can spatula it on without it dripping off like the other couple layers did. It's like thick peanut butter, which means it's ready to start being spackled on. I'm gonna focus on getting it into all of these crevices and building this area up to just be just a blob of silicone, really. I've got my first thickened layer on. I have started to fill in all the undercuts, anywhere that is going to create a little lip. I still need to get 1 or 2 more layers on so that I can no longer see the points of the spikes here and to cover these more. When doing a brush on mold, you want like at least a 1/4 inch, if not closer to a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to let this set up for a little bit. I'm going to sew the corset and then we'll do yet another layer. Alrighty, the leather is all sewn together. Look at how shiny it is. Granted, it is a little dirty right now because there was a bunch of clay and leather shavings still on my table when I cut this out, but those will clean up easy. I need to figure out how I'm going to top stitch these seam allowances because I'm afraid it's still a little too thick for my sewing machine. I have a test piece that I sewed and I'm gonna try dunking that in water and see if maybe getting this wet and then top stitching it will make it easier. But that's for an hour from now. Alrighty, and with that, she is heavy. But the mold is done. I'm gonna go put her outside so that she can finish curing. The first couple lines were going great. I was doing the outermost panels and they were looking beautiful. And then something happened and all of a sudden it wasn't stitching great, which is not usually a problem for sewing. You can just rip it out and redo it, but with leather, there is no fiber to kind of meld back into place. Once you have perforated it, it's very easy to rip it if you keep stitching over it. And I already knew that this was going to be ambitious because the leather was just so thick, but I was hoping that I could make it work. I'm still gonna try. I still have a couple little tricks up my sleeve. But now it's time to do the jacket on the mold. I'm doing a 2-part mold, so that's gonna take upwards of 4 hours, including cure time. So I need to get that done. That way I can hopefully break it open and cut into it and cast into it tomorrow. So let me go grab the freeform air and we'll get to making it. We got both sides done now, which means today we can crack it open and cast into it, but first we gotta clean out all that clay. Most of the stitching on the corset is done. I was finding that once I got one side of the top stitching done, now that that seam allowance, the right side was facing downward, it was dragging on the metal of my sewing machine. So I found that if I put some tissue paper underneath it, that stopped the drag. But I have a couple more lines of top stitching to do, so I'll finish that up today. I was just getting so frustrated with it, so I kind of had to keep taking breaks. So I didn't get it done last night as I hoped, but that is okay because I think we're making good progress. So I found this nice button up, and I don't want to destroy it because it actually looks really nice on him. And I want him to be able to wear it for more than just this event. So all I'm going to do is take a copy of the collar pattern here and make a new collar out of the leather that has some sort of like fishy fin shape to it, and just top stitch that right on with a long stitch so that way I can take it off after. After that, I will need to put some foam into the shoulder of the pauldron so that it fits comfortably on his shoulder, and find some way to rig it to him, and then hopefully make a headpiece for me. I think what I'm going to do is cast into the mold just the 3 spikes in the gold powder that I have, and then pull those out and just probably ribbon wrap it to a headband, and that way I just have like 3 little spikes here, and then maybe if I have some time do some little leather fins coming out of the head, but we'll see what I have time for. I think I've got enough costume already, but you can always have more. Yeah, so let's get started with the hardest thing, which is going to be breaking open that mold. The sculpt here by this spiky point because I knew this is going to be an area that's going to make it difficult to demold this piece. And so by building up the silicone here, I can then go in and do a zigzag cut to be able to open it up and free it. And doing a jeweler's cut here, the zigzag cut, will allow it to act as a registration key so that when we go to close this back up and cast into it, the cast doesn't move or become deformed when we cast into it, and we hopefully don't get too much flashing. So let me cut into that right now. Has been closed up, and I'm putting it in this box just to stabilize it. Here I have some Cast Magic Goldfinger. This is just like a mica. Now there's a couple ways that you can tint your pieces. The first way is to just put this into your clear resin. The other way is what's called cold casting. Now normally you would release your mold before casting into it, spraying it with this stuff. However, to do a cold cast, you want the mold to grab onto the powder when you brush it in. So we're not going to release it. I'm going to powder this into the mold, dump out the excess, and then just to be safe, I am going to put a little in my resin as well. All right, I have a finished casting here, and this one came out much better. See, it's got a nice shimmer to it like I wanted. Most of the points are intact. The only little issue is that I got too much powder in the tips, so they didn't come out perfect. But that's okay. I think it's kind of cool. It kind of looks like it was actually a battle-worn pauldron. So as you can see here, there's a little bit of flashing. Oh, there's a little bit of flashing there that came from doing the jeweler's cut on the seam to get it open. So I will just take a little X-Acto knife and very carefully trim that away. There we have it. Nice and clean on the inside, clean and shiny on the outside. I am going to give this a dark wash just to kind of hit the low points and make it more dimensional. And then I might even do a little bit of a teal patina on it, like it's been rusting and it's been made out of brass or something. So the corset is effectively done. Don't look too close because the stitching is not great, to be perfectly honest. It was a bit overambitious to try and put this through my sewing machine because this leather was like just a little too thick and the conditions just weren't right to be able to stitch it easily. So what I had to do is go back in, and where it skipped, I had to go in from the back side and kind of fake the bobbin thread and pull it back down underneath to at least kind of mimic the look of a complete stitch. But it's gonna get covered with the shiny things anyways, so we'll consider it done. Hopefully I will finish everything on my list tonight, which would be very exciting. Good evening, friends. It is Tuesday, T-minus 2 days till Labyrinth, and I'm feeling a little defeated if I'm being honest. The corset is not going very great because the leather is just too thick and it's very hard to sew. Trying to get the lining in as well. I think the lining stretched a bit, and I don't think adding the extra 1/4 inch of seam allowance was a very good idea now that I know that I can't fold it over like I was hoping. So I'm just gonna have to bind the whole thing in some black bias tape, which will look fine, but it's just not what I hoped. I need to finish the corset. My goal tonight is to get it to a wearable point, so that is binding grommets, hopefully the little fin on the hip. So, no more time to dally. I'm going to jump into some sewing, and I'll check back in a few moments to see if I was able to successfully bind the corset. Jeez. I got most of the corset done. I have 1 day left to get this all done. So tonight I'm trying to finish up the majority of the boyfriend's outfit, which means I need to sew a new leather collar onto his shirt. I need to weather the pauldron and put some foam in it and rig up an attachment system. So let's not dilly-dally, and here is another crafting montage. 3 days before the end of the event, I honestly was feeling really defeated. This corset was not coming together as easily as my other leather corset had, and I was just feeling like my skills were just not there. But having a deadline is really good for me, and also I think for other people, because it just forces you to get the thing done. It forces you to just learn the lesson and move on to the next project. And that's exactly what happened here. When I finally got the grommets in that corset, I was finally able to put it on, all of my defeat just washed away. I was so happy with the fit. Now, of course, it's not perfect. It's far from it, frankly, and I will definitely be trying this type of corset again with leather, but just not as thick of leather. But I'm really happy that I pushed through because I felt so beautiful on the day of and proud of what I had created. Not to mention, my boyfriend felt so cool in his armor piece. He was given so many compliments, and I'm really happy with the sculpt, and I'm glad I got to do a mold making and casting project with you guys. So if you enjoyed this video, you might want to check out the video linked here in the cards. I do all sorts of costuming tutorials and build-throughs here on the channel. And if you want to support the channel, you can get yourself a fun piece of jewelry like my little corset earrings here. I designed and had these made. They are on my website, nikkiblackwell.com. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to unplug and go make something, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!